former President Trump's running mate, and he's here with us on the set. And my first question is, are you still a senator for how much longer? I mean, when does that change?
Well, that won't change until we win. So
until you win.
We got to win first, and obviously I think we will. And I think you see a lot of my future colleagues hopefully joining us in the United States Senate, which I guess if this thing goes well and it goes as I expect it to, unfortunately I won't get to serve with a lot of those guys, which is bittersweet, but it means that we've done a lot of good for the country. So I'll take it.
Well, we already know a lot about you because you've had a famous book out and you've been in the U.S. Senate. But I've been digging into you a little bit, and I know what struck me is that Elizabeth Warren, who is as liberal as you can get, said about you that you are terrific to work with. What's the story with you and Elizabeth Warren?
Well, you know, my attitude towards the United States Senate is it's not a high-priced debating society. I am very conservative. I'm one of the more conservative members in a lot of ways, but I also think you have to work across the aisle to get things done for the people that sent you to Washington, D.C. And so, for example, after we had the financial crisis 18 or so months ago, sort of a minor financial crisis where, frankly, a lot of bank executives drove their banks into the grounds, but they paid themselves pretty fat bonuses afterwards. I think that's fundamentally unfair. If you're going to require a taxpayer bailout to save your bank, then you should not be able to pay yourself fat bonuses on the other end. So worked with Elizabeth Warren on some issues related to that. And I've worked with a number of colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, to get things done. It's one of the things people really underappreciate, I think, about President Trump's approach to leadership is obviously you have some fringe elements of the left who hate his guts, but actually a lot of my Democratic colleagues will admit in private he was very easy to work with because he could make deals for the American people.
Well, it's interesting because you've worked on issues like interest for the consumer. I mean, things that aren't particularly sexy topics, but are so profoundly important.
Absolutely. Things that really matter, right? How much are you paying for things? What are bank CEOs doing? Are taxpayers bailing out some of these institutions? And if they are, can the taxpayers get some of the money back? Like, these are things that necessarily make headlines, but they're part of good government, I think.
I want to talk a little bit of just the palace intrigue of the moment. You know, I mean, what the moment that you had yesterday. You said you didn't even know until you got here to the RNC. You're 39 years old. This is the first RNC you've ever attended, and you show up and you're the vice presidential nominee. I mean, that's just crazy.
It's totally crazy. Yeah. I mean, the last 24 hours, I could write another book, probably more interesting than the first one about my life. But you know, we landed in Milwaukee around 11. I had no idea whether President Trump had made a selection. He certainly hadn't told me. And the coolest part about it is when I finally talked to him around 2 o'clock and he offers me the spot. And you know how I grew up. I grew up in a poor family, like never expected to be anywhere, much less being asked to run as the vice presidential nominee for the Republican Party. But it's so funny, my kid is talking in the background because we have our 3 kids here. So my 7-year-old is talking in the background, and President Trump says, put him on the phone. So he just offered me the vice presidential slot, and then he takes the time to talk to my 7-year-old. One of these memories that I'll cherish for the rest of my life.
What do you say? Like, do you want the job? I mean, what does he say? When you get asked to be vice president nominee, what do you say to someone?
Well, in this case, I said yes.
Yes.
I
said it's a pretty quick answer.
No, but what was the question? I mean, how did he present it to you?
Well, the way he presented it to me, it's funny. He walked me through why he had asked me as his nominee. Of course, I was honored to hear it. And then he said, well, JD, I have to ask, do you accept? And I said, yes, sir, absolutely. And it's my great honor to accept.
I want to ask you, I mean, there was a write-up about yourself and about kind of this new Republican Party and these young guys that have kind of created this. It's a different party, and it kind of started with Trump.
That's right.
You've evolved it a little bit further. These different kind of politics. It's not pro-corporate. It's very populist in nature. Talk about your politics and what's changing in this party, because I'm seeing a lot of the changes right now.
Oh, absolutely. I think that fundamentally President Trump has changed the Republican Party, and I think he's changed it for the better. You see a lot of new people coming into the party, a lot of blue-collar folks, a lot of working-class people. And look, the basic idea here is very simple. America has to be a manufacturing powerhouse if it's going to be anything else. If you don't make your own weapons, if you don't make your own pharmaceuticals, you can't do anything else, and you can't employ good workers unless you're actually building your own stuff. So you hear President Trump talk a lot about made in America. What does that mean? Well, you've got to have low energy costs to make anything in America. You've got to be willing to fight back against the Chinese and their trade habits. You've got to be willing to actually rebuild the American heartland. And President Trump did a lot of that during 4 years. I think if we give him another chance, he's going to do a lot more of it.
To follow up on what Rob says is that it used to be that the Democratic Party was the blue-collar party. Where was this switch? Because it really has changed in the last couple decades.
I think it changed slowly for a couple of decades, and then all of a sudden with President Trump's ascension to the Republican Party nominee in 2016 and obviously his election to the presidency, you had people in my family who were ancestral Democrats, right? Patriotic, socially moderate to conservative, but they love their country. They just want a good chance, right?
Yeah.
If you work hard, you play by the rules, you ought to be able to pay for a house. You ought to be able to put food on the kids' table. That basic attitude, I think a lot of people feel abandoned by the Democrats. They feel looked down on. They feel like Democrats don't actually care about their priorities. And President Trump listened to people. It's kind of amazing, and it sounds very trite, but having a political leader who actually likes the people who vote for him, President Trump loves these people.
Yeah.
They know it, and I think that nexus is the source of this whole movement.
I want to talk something that's, what I thought was one of the worst things about his first term was the assault by the bureaucratic state on everything they tried to do and how much that crippled that first term. How do you guys avoid that? How do you dismantle that when you go in this? I mean, obviously he's learned a lesson, but that was a real drag on the first term.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, take just maybe the most important issue confronting our country right now, which is the 20 million illegal aliens that we have here. And, of course, it brings a lot of sex trafficking. It brings a lot of drugs, a lot of crime, 100,000 drug overdose deaths in our country. All of that is connected to what's going on at the southern border. You had the bureaucracy of the immigration system actually fighting President Trump as he fought to bring border security to this country. Well, a couple of things have happened since then. First of all, the Supreme Court justices that he appointed have passed down some rulings that I think will empower the president to really do border enforcement. And second of all, you have a Republican Party, to your point, Rob, that is really transformed. And you have a lot of Republicans who are going to support the America First agenda, not fight against it. Yeah. That's a big difference. We have to remember, in 2016, I was talking with Stephen Miller about this. When President Trump talked about putting American workers first, he was maybe the only speaker at the convention that year who actually believed in his core agenda. The party in 8 years has been transformed, and that's going to make it easier for him to govern. And if it's easier for him to govern, it's going to be better for the American people.
All right, speaking, I always love the stories. I read that you had a voice message from the current Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Did you get a voice message from her? Voice message?
I did. So President Trump offers me this job, okay, and my phone starts blowing up, and I get a call. It was from actually an unknown number, and it was apparently the Vice President Kamala Harris. We talked today. Actually, she was very gracious, very cordial. And I appreciated the call. Obviously, we're going to do everything that we can to persuade the American people to vote for the President Trump Vice President Vance ticket. But I appreciated the call.
Did you save it?
I did not. I did not.
Should have saved it. But she's challenged you now to a debate before her convention.
Okay, I didn't see that, but obviously we want to debate Vice President Harris because it's important for the American people to see the contrast. And by the way, President Trump's, I think, roundhouse kick in the first debate is part of the reason why you have Democrats in total disarray right now. Yeah. It is really the contrast between Republicans and Democrats. Democrats are actively trying to throw their nominee under the bus. This party out here is really united behind President Trump. It's a really good feeling, and I think that momentum is something you'd almost reach out and touch. It's so powerful.
It's so cool. Let's talk about winning this election here at the RNC. I read, I believe it was Axios reporting that the plan is whoever the VP was, this was written days ago, was basically just going to be embedded in Pennsylvania. Was going to be very heavy Pennsylvania. And that's when I read that, I think it was maybe a week ago, that's when I thought, I feel like it's Vance because I know Ohio. I'm from Ohio, and I just know how close that is to Pennsylvania. It's the same people. Who's going to connect better with them, than J.D. Vance? Is that the plan? Are you on a mission to get Pennsylvania?
Well, you knew more than me because I didn't know anything until yesterday. But the thing that I'll say is absolutely Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Obviously, we're here in Milwaukee. A major focus of President Trump's campaign. And look, it's very simple. Why does Joe Biden want to buy oil from Iran and from Vladimir Putin instead of from Pennsylvania energy workers? Why does he want to further weaken the American manufacturing economy that allows us to project power overseas? Yeah. Why does he constantly pursue the interests of foreign despots over the interests of the American citizen and the American worker? That is a case that I think works all over the country. I really think it's an argument that works in Pennsylvania and Michigan because they have felt the neglect of the consensus in Washington that leaves American workers behind. President Trump's going to change that.
You mentioned Iran. Iran is just fueling trouble in the Middle East. It
Absolutely.
Always has. And do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, it's dogged every president. They're paying money to kill people, kill Americans, and destroy Israel.
Two things very quickly, Greta. Number one, the Iranians have to know that if they get out of line, you're going to have a president who actually punches back and punches back hard. President Trump didn't need to start a war with Iran when he issued the attack on Soleimani. It really reined the Iranians in. It established deterrence, right? They were afraid that if they got out of line, they were going to suffer consequences for it. The other thing I mentioned earlier, if you are buying oil and enabling the Iranian oil economy to run at full speed, you're fundamentally weakening your own economy, but you're also empowering some of the worst people in the world. The terror attack on Israel, everything that Iran is doing, it's funded by the strength of the oil economy in Iran. We could get plenty of this stuff from our own workers, from our own country. We just need Joe Biden to stop doing stupid stuff.
Let me ask you one final question. This tweet, whatever it's called, from Trump comes out, announces you. I think it was within 2 hours that we hear that Elon Musk is promising at least $180 million into the campaign.
I didn't see that. Wow.
I know Elon Musk likes you.
Sure.
I know he wanted you to be the guy. Was there? Did that have any, he's like, oh, I got my guy. Now I'm ready to go.
No, certainly not. I mean, look, Elon and I know each other a little bit, but Elon is actually a great example of an American entrepreneur who's built a company, but also a company that's employed a lot of good American workers. If you think about, Elon Musk is in some ways a throwback to an older generation of American entrepreneur. He builds real things. He builds cars. He builds rockets, and that's I think the kind of economy that President Trump wants to create.
It's amazing stuff. I love it. Well, there's the sign right there. We got to put it up again because I can't believe how fast they make these.
It's crazy to see.
I mean, it's your name right there.
What an honor, man. What an honor.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, sir. Hope you come back.
Congratulations.
Come back, Newsmax, often. Thank you,
Good to see
sir.
you.